Hi, I'm Tonda, the architect behind Blueprints, and this is actually my first talk ever, um, and so we're gonna see how it goes. But this is about testing Blueprints, specifically how I did playtesting, which was kind of complicated for this game, and I came up with a system of playtesting, which I really like. So I think I'm going to use it for all my uh, games going forward. Um, so I guess talks usually start with when they say like, "Who am I?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm Tonda." Um, my last name actually has no canonical pronunciation. You can say Ros or Ross. I say both. I mix it up so that it can keep in a sort of flux state between them. If anyone corrects you, you can link back to ThinkyCon 2025 last talk. Okay, let's let's hope this goes well. If I cough, it's for dramatic effect. So who am I? I made Blueprints. That came out this year and April 10th. It is a puzzle strategy game. And this talk is going to focus a lot on puzzle and strategy sides of the game, which are kind of like two halves of a whole. So I knew pretty early on that testing this was going to be hard. It's a completely non-linear game. There's a lot of sequence breaking. There's a lot of lateral progression, uh, alternate solutions to everything. Everything is skippable. You don't actually have to solve any puzzles. Uh, it's got a lot of flexibility, which I guess kind of makes testing easy in a way. Um, because if someone can't solve something, they can still progress. Um, but I wanted to when I did playtesting. So when I was doing playtesting, it wasn't really for any like individual small things. It was more for the whole. So this is going to be a very pragmatic breakdown. This is more going to be a developer oriented, like step by step guide in how I did playtesting. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds. This is kind of more of the overview of how our playtesting workflow looked like and kind of geared more on the technical side. I'm sure there's some like Thinky game players watching. Hopefully you find this interesting. Um, I don't know if I'd advocate or sort of suggest people use this system sort of like wholesale. I think it's going to fit certain projects really well. I'm personally going to use it for all my games moving forward, but that's just because it worked out really well for me, and I love how it was able to um, refine the game. So uh, let's start with Thinky Games. What I love about the term Thinky Games is the community has kind of given it a wider definition than just puzzle games. It includes some sort of more strategic sort of deck building titles like Terry Kavanagh's Dicey Dungeons, J. Ma's Into the Breach, Daniel Mullen's Inscription, and if you played Blueprints, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that I find myself directly in the middle of this Thinky game spectrum. Uh, if it's a Venn diagram, Blueprints is right in the middle. And so when I first began thinking about playtesting, I was like, I need to find people like me who are kind of familiar with both these sides because that's what I really want to tailor the experience for. I wasn't super interested in making it have a wide appeal. I always considered it like pretty niche. And I was like, okay, I just need to find people that are somewhat familiar. They don't have to be like diehard puzzle heads or like, you know, deck builder, board game, tabletop players, but to have some experience on that for that. And that's not to say I was ignoring everyone else. But I think it's kind of like that talk earlier in ThinkyCon 2025. We designed for grandma. We accidentally made a game for everyone. I think it's kind of like that, where if you focus on making a game for one type of person or yourself, I think like to a larger extent, you should always be making a game for you, that you'll actually love as a player if you randomly found it in the world. But I think if you do that, then you will just happen to make a game that a lot of other people will love too, because you know the authentic the authentic nature of the game shines through. And I think like I don't love horror movies, but like re- I I really really like the sort of masterpieces of the genre, right? Even though I don't love the genre as a whole, I love going in and seeing like, oh, this was a really fierce or bold work. So I think it's possible to reach people outside of the bubble if you make a great game, which should be the primary goal. Um, so for my playtesting goals, I wanted to focus on players in the middle of this, players like me. So how do you find playtesters? I'm sure many developers listening have sought playtesters in the past. There's a couple avenues that are pretty typical. You can ask your friends, you can ask your family, you can ask colleagues or coworkers, people you know. You can ask other devs. Um, there's like some game swaps where you can like trade your games and give each other feedback. A couple cities have events where you can sort of like have playtest nights where you can go play each other's games, and that's mostly attended by devs. Um, and so you can get feedback from them. You could go to conventions if you're into having your game played in a public, very noisy space where they don't have much time, where their attention's split. That you're going to get some great data from there. Let me tell you. You can go to sort of forums, maybe like the subreddit r/playtesting. You might find a couple playtesters, random people in there who might be down to play your game. And of course, if you're really brave, you can go into like Discord communities and post about wanting playtesters and get instantly banned for self promotion. So that's a great strategy too. I think all of these have major flaws, several of which I slipped in a mention during that. Families and friends are going to be like a little too positively biased. Um, Other devs are going to be playing your game from a completely different access, more technical point of view. Um, if they make games in a similar vein, they're kind of going to have a leg up on regular players. It's just a slightly different perspective. So all of these have individual flaws. Um, but they all share one common overarching issue. And that's that if we bring back the Venn diagram, if you get playtesters in this way or through these methods, your playtesters are going to look like this. They're going to be all over the place. You're going to get a couple that really sort of jive with the game, that are in that. Maybe two people replied in the forums you crashed, or the Discord server before you got banned. But in generally, you're going to get people that don't necessarily play this type of thing, and or they have some of those other problematic issues that I was talking about. And I think that as developers, we're just so uh, grateful when we find someone willing to play our game, because they're willing to give us their time. And like, we're not going to take that for granted, and I totally get that. So I think that we're willing to accept basically anyone that we can find. But I really value the time that they're giving us. And so I think that you're kind of it's going to be time better spent if they're closer to who you want to be crafting your experience around, rather than the random people from r/playtesting that give you feedback, or on Steam, right? Steam has the new playtesting thing, like the people that had signed up on there. So I wanted a better way to find people in the center, these people, and I wanted to craft my game only having these type of people playtesting. Some bleed on either side is totally fine, and I sort of opened up my metric as I went along. I broadened my sort of stipulations, but when I began, I really wanted to make sure the fundamental core was crafted for these type of players. So I began thinking about this back in 2019. I come from a commercial and film background, so I had already had kind of a lot of experience, sort of recording videos of sort of an editing session for a client and sending them videos. Maybe you'll show you could even be sending a video to another editor showing them how this sort of project is set up. So I was kind of interested in getting playtesters to play their game, record their sessions offline, and then send me the file. So that's what I wanted. That's pretty commonly done. I don't think that's anything too crazy. Um, but when I started thinking about how I was going to technically set this up, what sort of program I was going to use, what sort of tools, I was thinking, I started thinking about streaming, this is a 2019. I wasn't super familiar with video game streaming. I think I had maybe seen like a Magic the Gathering like set announcement uh stream on their channel, but like that was about the extent of my experience. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized um, that streamers kind of made for the perfect playtesters. Um, so I wanted to head over to Twitch, but let me tell you why streamers make the perfect playtesters. Three big reasons that I came up with. Um, One, they are technically savvy. I think if you've ever messed with OBS, if you've ever messed with Streamlabs or any of these sub softwares that they're using to set up, if you've ever messed with a webcam and trying to get a webcam to work correctly and to cut that, they're not going to have any trouble recording a gaming session offline and uploading a video. That's like the easiest thing in the world compared to like the technical stuff that they're having to deal with in terms of their streaming setup. So I think if you're approaching a random person asking them, "Oh, can you record a video of you playing and sending it to them?" You'd have like a pretty maybe 50-50 could be able to do it without you having to sort of troubleshoot them and take them step by step through it. Certainly, family members, older generation, are not going to be as technically savvy. Streamers are just going to be able to fulfill that criteria instantly. Two, their play history is public. This is actually one of the big reasons why I jumped on sort of the idea of using streamers for playtesting, is because unlike normal people, all their play history is public from Twitch API data pulls. So you should be able to find the people that are interested in the type of game that you are making very easily. And number three, probably the most important to me personally, is they are used to being watched. I don't know if you've ever played a game with someone staring over your shoulder, and I think that's even worse when it's the developer, and I think that's even doubly worse when it's a puzzle game. But it's just like the dynamic changes and your experience changes. So I'm like, this is kind of a conundrum. Is like, how do you watch a playtester play your game without fundamentally and dynamically changing the situation? And there's always going to be a bit of a change. It is a bit like the observer effect in quantum mechanics, where it's like you're fundamentally shifting this. Playtesters, or rather streamers, are also it is going to be different whether they're playing a game offline or online to an audience, but they have a lot more experience normalizing being watched. So that's why they're just used to being watched. They're going to be changed. Their experience is going to be changed less, and it's going to be closer to a natural experience. So when I first went to Twitch, I started watching Riven streams. Like I said, I wasn't really familiar with Twitch at all, and I didn't really get the appeal before I went there. Like, why would you want to watch someone else play a game? But basically, like within 10 minutes, I kind of like it all clicked. I was like, I've played Riven like 40 times, and I know like every inch of the 5 islands. And watching this person who was on their first playthrough, watching them experience Riven for the first time was like the closest I had gotten to experiencing that for a very long time. That was probably the most potent playthrough since like my third playthrough of Riven. So it had been a long time since I had sort of seen it with fresh eyes. So I sort of instantly got why streaming was sort of compelling. And so I was kind of just like browsing around categories, but I knew that I had to figure out an easier way to track down players by the games they were playing. Now I did watch a lot of full playthroughs and sort of get to know people, and I would get a sense on whether they would be right for playtesting blueprints, and a lot of them ended up playtesting blueprints. But over the course of a couple of months, I came up with a sort of more formalized methodology. And that's why we enter sullynome.com. And if you don't know, Sullynome is like a analytics site. It's like a Twitch analytics site. There's a lot of data on streamers and the games they play. I think there's like a year of data, and they have a really robust channel search tool, which you can search the past 180 days of Twitch activity. And they have a bunch of settings, like you can search for players that are live now or offline. I'd recommend unchecking this because you want to have the most in curating sort of names of channels to check out. You want to have like the most channels you could. I would recommend all these checked. You want to just find as many people as possible. And then here's the cool thing, finding channels that stream the following games. And and you can even, cross-reference this by amount of time they played. So I would recommend, like, let's search for the Taylor's Principle 2, players that have streamed that in the last 180 days. You can set like, they must have played 3 hours, 5 hours. That kind of eliminates people that might have like bounced off it, didn't actually like it. So like by setting it a little higher, you're more likely to get players that are actually like enjoying the game. If you search that straight up, players that have played Taylor's Principle 2 in the last 180 days, you're going to get 135 results. And here, I think the fourth number over is the average viewers. So you can kind of get a sense of how big their channel is, and then the language too, and some other and some other cool factors, because maybe you only want to be approaching streamers for playtesting that speak your language. The cool thing about the search, and sort of the reason this works for my game specifically, is you can then cross this by searching for a second game title. So if I'm using one puzzle title, I'll probably use a strategy title for my second one. Like, let's say like Slay the Spire. And you can you can search for players that have only played Taylor's Principle 2 and Slay the Spire in the last 180 days. And that limits it down to 4 people, 1 Japanese, 3 English. So now I have three names that I can possibly check out their channels and add to a list. Now, there's unlimited combinations, there's Firmament, Balatro, Magic and Mist. That's a go-to for me just because of the phonetics of Magic and Mist. And it kind of sums up blueprints. Gone Home, Hearthstone. So there's unlimited sort of combinations that you can check to find the the right type of player that you want to be crafting your experience around. And if you run out of titles, you can always go to the Thinky Games database, which is basically how I find all the games I'm playing. I'm currently working through a massive backlog. They show right at the top of their database, they show new releases, which is cool. If you know anything about Twitch, you'll know that newly released games are disproportionately played more than older titles. So you're going to find a lot better if you're looking at releases, games that at least came out in the last year. They also have Thinky Essentials, which is kind of like the Thinky canon. And so I wasn't playing a lot of puzzle games during the 8 years of Blueprints' development. Part of my thing was just to sequester myself from what was being done by other people. And so a lot of times I would like, this is now how I'm going back through my backlog and playing some of these games. But I would still search for these even if I hadn't played it. I would be like, well, this is, these are Thinky Essentials, so they're going to be pretty good. And they have tags on here, so I can see whether it's from the strategy side or the puzzle side. So basically, by using this method, you can just come up with a whole lot of list of channels to check out, and all these channels are going to be players that are kind of specifically geared toward your game. Now, it doesn't have to be like cross genre. Like if your game is more like standardly positioned firmly within one genre, you can still use multiple games to search for channels, because that will just show like this wasn't a one-off. They didn't just play, Bob Is You, and left. Like they played Bob Is You and Steven's Sausage Roll, and then you're like, okay, like I think I know the type of player this is. So it just gives you a little, being able to search for multiple games just gives you like a better sense of what type of player that is without ever going to their channel or looking at their full history. And of course you can click on any of these names and you can look at all the games they've streamed in the last year, which gives you an even better idea of who they are and what type of games they like. So I just created a massive list of players, and then I just went on to Twitch, and I would just watch a VOD if they weren't live. If they were live, I would probably watch a stream of them live, just get a sense of who they were, see if they were like a good fit, like see if they were a personality type that would like maybe be open for this. Are they nice? Are they enjoying gaming? Are they focusing on the game, or is Twitch more of a social thing for them? So these are all just kind of questions I kind of looked at before I sent them a DM. I kept my DM really simple. I just said, "Hi, I'm an indie developer named Tonda. I'm making a puzzle strategy game, and I'm looking for playtesters for our closed beta." Mentioning closed beta, I felt was pretty important because it kind of shows that you're not just looking. This isn't a marketing, because I think streamers are approached a lot for marketing games, playing games on stream as part of a marketing beat to sort of promote the game. So I think by kind of saying up front that you're looking for offline, like offline play, that kind of just shows right off the bat that this isn't necessarily geared toward marketing. This is just like you're just looking for playtesters. I would usually follow that up by saying, I found your channel using a search tool. Just be totally transparent with them, saying like, you played, Myst and Magic, and my game has some similarities. Hit me up if you're interested or want more details. And then I just leave it at that, So I just send this off to the channels. Sometimes, I would talk about something that happened in their stream if I was watching it, so that it didn't feel like just like this is just like bot spammy. Because like, I only approach people that, I thought were cool fits, and like this wasn't like I wasn't sending this out in bulk. I probably spent way more time curating than I should have. But of the messages I sent, about 30% got responses, and 70% went unanswered, which I think is like pretty good. Like Twitch, DMing on Twitch is like I don't think anyone uses Twitch to like message each other. So like getting responses at all is like a win in my book. Um, so then when they did message me back, I told them what I was looking for. Um, and we kind of had a conversation, and I kind of answered all the questions they had. I would offer to show them the Steam page, and this is a big reason to get your game live on Steam before this process, because I think for a lot of people, Steam sort of like legitimizes a game, where I mean, you could still do this with like an itch.io page too, but like I think that they're going to be really wary of you being a scammer because you're just a stranger that hit them out of the blue. So there has to be a lot of trust built up. So having your game listed on Steam, even if you're not planning on releasing it anytime soon, I think it did build a lot of trust early on, because it was like, oh, hey, look, this is an actual game on Steam. They're not just going to send me malware. I don't know if I think I would want it either on some platform that's not just like sending them an executable file and being like, trust me, like this is going to be fun. Because I think my success rate would have been a lot lower than that. But I would also, so I had the Steam page, but I also told them, if you can, here's the Steam page if you want to look at it. I'm really looking for players going into it as dark and as blind as possible. So don't look too hard, because I would love to get, the data from, people who are going in knowing as little as possible, because that's kind of that's the intended experience. And usually these type of people would like get that, because like, of course, these are Thinky game players. They kind of know exactly what type of game. I think all of us, if a friend said don't look anything up, like you're like, okay, copy that. You're going to know exactly the type of game that they're setting you up for. So I told them I was looking for someone who can record offline play sessions and upload them. Sort of like the first thing of why I thought the streamers were a perfect fit. Just like straight off the bat, I'm looking for recording offline play sessions and uploading them. And because they're streamers, like that most of them were just like easy. I was like, I'll set up a sort of like, a cloud file system like Dropbox, send you a link. You can just like upload the video to that. And that I told them that I prefer commentary, but they don't need face cam, obviously. Commentary just so I can get a little better insight in how they're playtesting what's going on. I told them that it can be really compressed. The quality didn't matter to me at all. I know what the game looks like. And the second thing is I was looking for someone who can play as they would normally play any other game, right? Like, I wasn't looking for like QA testing or like bug finding or like anything else. I was looking for people to have full playthroughs, but they could play it like they would any other game. So if it's something that you would stop playing in 10 minutes, I told them, feel free to quit anytime. Like if you play 10 minutes and you're like, yeah, I get it, and like not my cup of tea, it's like, cool. Just like as if you had played any other free game, just walk away whenever you want. And also just like, I'm not gonna be asking for feedback. I'm not going to be hitting you with surveys. Like I literally am just content just watching this playthrough and getting all my insights sort of passively in this experience. And that was pretty important to me, because I think when you ask for feedback, a lot of times um you're sort of inducing it in a way, in the same way that like a project manager, if you do it, give a deliverable to a project manager, they're going to give you notes, because it's just expected of that position, in the same way that a lot of notes are that. And I think you can get all the information you can just by watching someone play. And of course, like a lot of the data that you're getting could be gotten through other data acquisition methods. Um, but you're not going to, I can see like a parlor is picked 70% of the time it's offered, but I can't tell, are they picking it with a smile? Are they excited to draft this room? Or are they sighing loudly with more and more dread with each passing day? And you're not going to get that from data. You have to actually watch people play. The last thing I was looking for was for them to sign an NDA. This is probably like the hardest one, and probably the only thing that actually like I lost some people at this step because they didn't necessarily trust uh, a stranger to sign like a document. Now I tried my best. I just tried to use like a sort of very standard NDA offline so that you can see like I'm just using a standardized NDA, but it's pretty important to me that like none of blueprints leaked before launch. And so I wanted to keep things as secret as possible because I kind of developed for the entire 8 years in secret anyway. So that was kind of important to me. Of the 30% of the original message that responded, and then we had this further conversations, and I told them what I needed. About 40% said yes. 60% not interested for one reason or another. So that was my overall success rate, just blindly DMing streamers on Twitch to sort of curate my own playtesting community. And then from there, I just set them up with a video file workflow. I'm going to walk you through this real quick. This is kind of really step-by-step technical in case you want to use specifically Dropbox for this purpose. You just create a folder. You can name it and then just hit create. From here, you can hit the gear next to the folder, go down to add to folder and hit request files. The reason I wanted to put this in here is it's really not sort of intuitive how to create sort of file request folders in Dropbox. Obviously, it's like down in the sub menu. From here, you can kind of just say like, oh, this is for playtesting. Please upload your playtest sessions here. And then you get a link. And then you send this link to the playtester, and they get to see a really cool sort of page when they click on that link, and then tell them to bookmark or pin that page. And then that's where they can just throw their video files in, and then those files will sync to your computer or your Dropbox folder if you're just using it offline. So that was the workflow. And then after I set them up with that, I send them the link, and then I'd send them a Steam key as soon as they signed the NDA. And then that was pretty much good to go. I did not, some people I chat with a lot. I tried not to influence their play through at all. So I was not giving them any information. I wasn't really answering questions if they asked. I think they got a good sense from our early conversation, like the type of creator I was, that, like this is a sort of a project cloaked in mystery. I'm not going to necessarily give anything away. And that didn't really ever change. But I did like, become friends with a lot of them over the course of the 4 years that we did playtesting. Now, they weren't playing for 4 years. We did 4 different waves. We called them seasons of playtesting. The first was in January 2021, and that went all the way up till pretty much our release. The last season was 2024. And the reason that basically I did them in seasons is I would get a whole bunch of playtesters. They would play the game. And then from all those insights, I would tweak the game. What did I tweak? I just sort of like honing the experience closer to what I had envisioned. Sometimes things would not be working out the way I had wanted. Sometimes a room would be appearing way more often. I would tweak like sort of numbers, like the number of items in a room. or the number of coins that might appear, like little things like that. And so I would make all these changes, and then I would run it again in season 2 and see how it works again. And sort of rinse and repeat. I did this 4 times, and with blueprints, like there's so many moving parts that I feel like I could have done 4 more years of playtesting. I probably could have done it forever. I really, really enjoyed the process. And so I guess at the end of the day, I loved, I guess I loved everything about it. I really loved watching people play. That probably never got old. In total, I had a little under 100 playtesters across all 4 years. Some people replayed it every season, like Dark Shocks. Some people, only played it once. Some people never ended their playthrough, like Space Beyonds. They just kept playing forever and ever. But I think in total I watched about 2,000 hours of playtest footage as part of the crafting experience. So I just want at the end here, I just want to do a big thank you to all the playtesters. They just like their contributions to the project. That was like half of the project. It was an 8-year process. 4 years of it was playtesting, balancing, crafting, refining, and sort of during that each season I would be adding like a lot more cool stuff to the game. So I just could never hope to repay these people for what they contributed to the game and what they offered. But there is one playtester who I would like to try to help, and his name is Iggy. He was one of our lead playtesters. I think he joined in wave 3 and put a couple hundred hours into the game. And Iggy has polycystic kidney disease and only has a few months to find a living kidney donor. So I'm going to use my talks and newfound platform to kind of spread the word, at least among the blueprints and adjacent communities. And hopefully they spread it even farther to try to find him a living kidney donor. His story, contact, and donor information can all be found at iggyland.org. And here's a QR code that takes you to the same site. Time is pretty short here, and it takes months for a donor to get cleared. So if you want to help us, feel free to spread the word among your community. And after ThinkyCon, I'm going to post some stuff up on the Blueprints social accounts. And if you want to, you can help spread those. Iggy was actually the first player that kind of broke the resources in the game. He was the one that kind of pioneered the bunk room, laundry room, and shrine synergies. If you know, you might know. And I think he was ultimately one of the reasons why that's still in the game, because of how much fun he had sort of breaking it in that way. So yeah, I guess like a lot of methods and blueprints, I'm positive that the playtester system is far from efficient, like about as far from efficient as you can be. But that's pretty much how I did everything, and it seemed to work out. And most importantly, I had a lot of fun doing it. So I don't think it's going to be useful for everyone, but if you're curious, try it out. I do think that streamers make for the best playtesters, and so that's my conclusion. Play forever.
Thank you so much, Tonda. That was fantastic, and we will absolutely do our best to spread that link for Iggy as far as we can. Everybody in the chat, please share that as with any communities you're in.
Thank you.
You happy to take a few questions? Everybody's been very good and has asked questions that are all on topic. So
Good. Yes, I'm very secretive about everything else. You can kind of tell what the top. I mean, like for ThinkyCon, you'd think I would do a talk on my puzzle design and stuff, and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to talk about some of that stuff. I'm going to take a lot of this stuff to my grave. But the logisticals, the technical, the developer process, I'm happy to discuss all that.
I love that, and I also very much appreciate. I mean, I also I love the Thinky Games database was part of that process, and I love that you highlighted it. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I just bleed Bumblebee. Like yellow and black is like that is how I find games. Like that's why that's sort of why I agreed to the talk, because like I live like thinkygames.com is basically my homepage, because like
yes,
I just use the database to find everything. You know, I just did my first Obra Dinn playthrough.
Oh, nice! Wow.
Yeah, so I just played Lorelei finally. I had basically been hearing like 2 years of people comparing our games. So I'm now finally getting in and finally catching up on the canon.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're going through the Thinky Essentials list and finding
yes,
great games.
I am exactly. I'm doing exactly that.
I mean, that was our hope in building the database. So I'm really glad it's working out.
It literally covers every game I love. But yeah, let's go to questions.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Okay, all the questions are coming in now. So I'll start with some of the questions we got earlier. So Dom Camus in the chat was asking. Streams are a primary form of marketing for many games now. Were you conscious of that when choosing this approach for playtesting? Do you think this all had positive side effects for marketing? And I was wondering about this as well. And I was thinking about, does that mean those playtesters might not stream your game now? Is that going to have a negative effect? So, yeah.
I think it's fundamentally different, because I think when you're marketing, you're going to be looking for streamers of a certain audience size. Whereas I'm looking for streamers of a certain like taste. So I kind of ignored audience size completely. Like some of our playtesters had decent size audiences. Most, have smaller audiences and are just in it for the love of the game. But like, so I think I wasn't really familiar in 2019 when I started. I did not realize as crucial as it is. And of course, if you follow, Blueprints had a really big sort of marketing campaign for streamers. So we did get, like Co-Carnage and Pirate Software and Giga and some of the big streamers that actually played and contributed toward marketing. But of course, these are streamers with, hundreds of thousands of followers. And so it's totally different. And so I don't think the marketing component plays any factor into this system specifically.
Right. Fantastic answer. Thank you. I'm trying to keep on top of all the questions that are coming through. So Waika also asked, now that your first game is out and has a devoted following, would you consider that community of players that you brought around the game as your playtesting community for future projects?
Yeah, I think I don't know how similar my games will be to each other as I go forward. But I think that they will be fundamentally Tonda games. So I think that if the playtesters I found and who really grew attached to the game, because like not everyone finished the game, I should say probably about 60% of playtesters actually, found room 46, 40% bounced off at various stages. So certainly the ones that finished the game and really connected with it, I would love to carry them on to future projects if they're down.
So you said that they'll be fundamentally Tonda projects. Do you think they'll be fundamentally Thinky? It seems you have a affinity for Thinky types of games.
Yeah, I mean, like the big one of the big genres I love. It's adjacent to a lot of Thinky games, but I don't think it's quite in the Thinky category. Is like Metroidvanias,
Sure.
and so I wouldn't count me out for developing some things that have a little bit more reflex component, action reflex components. They will probably always have Thinky components in there with them, but to various degrees. I don't want to limit myself yet.
Makes sense, absolutely. Okay, so Vida was asking for some a bit of clarification, or I'm not sure if it was phrased as a question, but I thought of the question as well, which is we were just wondering, did you have to compensate any of these playtesters? Are they all?
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
is a huge topic, and one I've given a lot of thought about because like I think that the service that playtesters give, they're like the most unsung cogs of the development process, and they're giving us so much time and so much of their love, so much of their insights. So obviously, for indie devs, it's usually not a realistic factor, especially if your game is long, right? It's very easy if your game is, like a short hike, then you can probably figure out a way to compensate people. But if you kind of were listening in terms of like me, how much I focused in on how important it was to me that their experience was a natural playthrough, I think that just like when being watched changes the fundamentals, paying people to play a game
Sure.
certainly destroys the natural dynamic.
Right. Yeah.
So as crazy as it is, it's like it's something that really can't be done. And I was really transparent with people up front, in that like you'd be getting in the credits, you get a free copy of the game. Um, and so those were basically the two things that we offered in terms of compensation. And like I said, there was really no expectation on how long they played it. So you just get a free game. If you like it, feel free to keep playing. And hopefully that feels, somewhat fair. I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's probably a topic that deserves a lot of consideration. And certainly I feel like for any AAA game, like, that has actually like deep pockets, then they can play, they can they like one of my friends was a playtester for Overwatch, and he got paid like $50 a day, like, pretty small potatoes in terms of their budget. But at least someone's playing. If you want to play test games and get paid, there are
There are
games
people doing it.
there are games that will pay you.
Absolutely. Okay, so next question over here. I had a bunch of questions myself, but I'll prioritize other people's questions. Samuel Pratt is asking, most developers avoid reusing playtesters for more than one session. Why did you choose to do this, and did it have any specific advantages?
Yeah, so from season to season, I think that's you're diminishing value on what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
Like I really want fresh playtesters to really get, because I'm changing the experience and I want to see how the experience plays. So that at that point, that's just letting playtesters just play for fun. And then, I'm not necessarily getting as valuable insights on the experience in the early game. But if they get into new content, then I kind of it catches back up, So like there was like each season I would add like a lot new, sort of things in the game, mechanics, systems, maybe areas. And then when they encounter those new items, then I would get some cool insights. But it's certainly a lot less valuable than fresh people each season.
Sure.
But obviously these guys are doing full playthroughs, and I don't want to spoil how long Blueprints is, but this is in terms of sessions, like they are, I think I had 6 terabytes of videos. So like it's they're putting in sessions just on their first playthrough, a lot of footage.
That leads me to another question, which isn't one of the ones that was asked, which is, did you have to watch some of these videos like a higher speed than the actual recording to get through it all?
So it's really compelling to me. I would pretty much put them up on like a second monitor,
Right.
and then and then eventually, maybe like season 3, I was so familiar with the game that I could just listen to audio, and I would know what they're doing. And then when they got to like anything like interesting or like something that I was like very curious what the reaction be, I would be like, let me like pull this back up and look at it. So it was a lot of second monitor stuff. Like after, I think first season, I just watched straight, and then further on, I got kind of lazier with it. Some people are just compelling. I think if you've ever watched a playthrough, someone else play Blueprints or a streamer, you'll kind of get why it's sort of compelling, even if you've played the entire game yourself.
Sure.
I thought at first I was just biased, like, oh, it's my game. Of course, I love watching people play, but I've kind of I have enough data now to know that it's just kind of it's fun to watch, and it's because everyone's experience is so different, so it's always kind of compelling. And I think after 2,000 hours, I watched about 2,000 hours in just playtesting. I've probably watched another 1,000 hours since the game's released, just watching people play.
Right.
So
I was going to ask about that as well. Are you still using streamers as a way of getting further feedback on the game? Because I know I think you're planning one more update to the game. Is that correct?
I'm not really looking at too much to balance. So part of my thing was like I wanted to get that right as much as possible before launching.
Right.
There might be very slight tweaks, things that I kind of already knew that were kind of like slightly unbalanced when we launched, that I might try to sneak in for the 1.10, but it's more or less concrete.
Cool, great. So are you okay for time, by the way? Because we've got a few more questions. And
let's do a few more. Sure.
A few more, cool. So this one you maybe have answered slightly anyway, but I'll ask it just in case anything else comes to mind. So Dario was asking, Blueprints is notably a very long game, especially to get to many of the interesting puzzles. I mean, I guess there are interesting puzzles early as well, but there are some of them are much deeper into the game as well. How long did most of the testers play the game for, and were you able to play test all of the puzzles? That's interesting.
I have two playtesters have quadruple hours in the game.
Oh my gosh!
But obviously, like they're playtesting. So I mean, I don't know if that answers the question, but it certainly paints a scope.
I quite like the second part of this though. Is like, were you able to actually playtest everything that you've put in the game?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, it's all been okay, great. So let's skip some of these. Some of these are more jokey questions. That's also a jokey question. Here's a question. Have any of the puzzles been changed after playtesting and feedback, or were they set in stone in the design phase? I guess.
Oh yeah. 4 years of tweaks. Like I think a lot changed. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Scroll down. There's a few more here. You had a lot of speedrunners on the testing team. Was that an intentional choice?
Okay, so this is cool. The very first playtester I recruited, and so this was before I kind of figured out all my methodology. His name was Admiral Flapjack, and I found Flapjack actually watching another Riven playthrough for another playtester called Bogey, and he was just in the chat, and I was like, oh, I had seen him come up in the topic before, and I kind of had a chat with him, and I think he mentioned that he played randomizers, and I was like, oh, a Riven speedrunner who also has a love for randomizers. So I kind of got my Venn diagram overlap right there, like the confirmation. It's like, I think if you play a lot of randomizer content, like I don't know if anyone's ever played Zelda 1 randomizer or seen Zelda 1 randomizer.
I've watched playthroughs of it, yeah.
It's kind of similar to Blueprints in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's cool. So I invited him to be the very first playtester. He agreed. And then because he was kind of in the Myst and Riven speedrunning scene, he kind of, after he fell in love with the game, he started, asking me like, oh, I have someone else that's interested in playtesting. And so it kind of just spiraled from there. And so a lot of the playtesters kind of came from his starting seed. And that made it a lot easier to find a lot of playtesters, is because a lot of playtesters would recruit other playtesters, which I guess is probably a testament to the game itself kind of doing a lot of my work for me.
Absolutely. We'll keep it to just 2 more questions if that's okay, folks.
Cool.
Apologies. So
we got to end ThinkyCon 2025 strong.
Exactly. I mean, that's okay. Let's make sure we get good questions.
It was
on that stuff.
yeah, it was a lot of pressure going last. I was like, okay, I gotta hit him with the play forever.
It's also worth noting we weren't entirely sure whether we'd get a talk from you until only like a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really glad
Yeah,
you came through. Very
I
happy
was a little after deadline.
but yeah, I'm very happy that you managed to sneak it in. There's a question that came right after the previous one about speedrunners, which is exactly the same format, and they've just replaced a couple of words, which is you had a lot of missed players on the testing team. Was that an intentional choice?
I think it's the same crowd. I think it's actually the same crowd. Well, I mean, actually, like most of the people I recruited early on were just found from me watching Riven and Mist playthroughs on Twitch, and so I think a lot of the ones I found just happened to play that. But most of those people were playing for the very first time, so I wouldn't even say they were like necessarily Mist fans.
Right.
Hopefully, they became one when they finish Riven. But yeah, so there was a core group that, because they connected so much with the game, that they kind of proliferated themselves into greater numbers than maybe was natural. That I certainly was not using Mist and Riven excessively in my search combinations, solely because in order to cultivate enough options of people to approach, you really need to mix up the numbers, because like you saw Taylor's Principle 2, popular recent game, and Slay the Spire, ultra popular game, that only resulted in 4 results,
right? Yeah.
of which 3 spoke English. So it's kind of like shifting with a pan in a stream. You're getting a couple specks of gold, but it's very hard to get a lot of nuggets in one pulse. So Mist and Riven, because they were so old at the time, the Riven remake was not out when we were doing this, but I did get to use a little bit of Firmament, of course, Abduction, and all the Mist sequels.
That actually made me wonder. Sorry, I'm now injecting another question, which is:
Cool.
Did it turn out that any of the playtesters you found were familiar with Maze, the book that inspired you?
No, I don't think so.
I think so.
A lot of them would talk about stuff that I wasn't familiar with, like Betrayal, which a lot of people bring up. Betrayal.
Oh,
I was not familiar at all with Betrayal.
That's funny because like there is like kind of a similar aesthetic to the room tiles.
Yep. I remember the first time someone mentioned it, and I was like, "Let me Google this game," and then I saw the Google image popped up. I go, "Let me not look at that again until after our release." So yeah, a lot of recommendations. The first time I ever heard Outer Wilds was from a playtester. So I actually, before the playtesters were doing some of the Thinky games database work for me in terms of showing me sort of adjacency titles that I would one day get to play.
That's great. I'm going to ask. This is the last question from the chat.
Cool.
And it's because it's an elaboration of a previous question that I think we didn't quite understand it as they were intending it. So they were asking, so as a result of the playtesting, were there any dramatic changes, like puzzles cut entirely or dramatically changed as a result of playtest? Or was it mostly tweaking?
Cool. So the cool thing about blueprints and the way I kind of approach things is because there's really no puzzle that's kind of necessary to reach room 46. I'm fine with them being there being some difficult puzzles that are very hard to crack open, because you can always bypass them. And that a lot of times I would see someone like a playtester come up with like a cool idea or theory to try to solve this in a way that I hadn't anticipated. And if it made logical sense and I thought it was cool, then I might be like, oh, you know what, that should work. I think that should work. So I would be much, rather than like fundamentally change puzzles, because I was kind of fond of a lot of the designs of things. I would probably more err to the side of adding more hints later on in further corners of the game that people could eventually find. So if they were stuck on something, maybe way down the line, they could find something that would finally like clue them into this,
Yeah.
or adding in alternate methods of solving them. But I don't think I don't think there was any major
Mhm.
changes to any of the individual puzzles in the game.
That's one of the things I love about the game is that you do get even if you have gone completely off track with a puzzle, like there's always going to be some little nudge that comes along a little bit later and says, "Hey, if you should think about that thing again." And he's like, "Oh, okay." There's
So
there's something else going on.
that's my secret tactic.
Um,
I think the parlor puzzle had a lot of had a lot of changes because I just kept missing logical lines that people would find a contradiction for. So that's the puzzle that I usually say has the most revisions in the entire game. Obviously, there's like over 100 of them, so it's not just one puzzle. It's kind of like a sub game itself. But I certainly was revising those nonstop throughout the 8 years.
Great, thank you. And we will leave that there. That'll be the last question.
Cool.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. We took a lot of questions there. So yeah, thank you so much, Tonda. Fantastic presentation. And
thank you for ThinkyCon 2025. Can't wait for next year.
Thank you so much. Feel free to drop out, and then I'll wrap up with everybody over here.